good afternoon, and welcome to our first Community Connections webinar for 2022. We are so happy to be back and able to share some great resources with you this year. Just a reminder that this is a free monthly virtual webinar. Please encourage your family and friends to join us. We have a great lineup of different topics this year, and I do have our schedule available. It is on our website, which is hospiceheart.org under the Education tab. So if you'd like to learn more about each month's topic, please be sure to check out our website, or you're also welcome to view our Facebook page that has all the information on it as well. We're really excited to kick off with such an important topic, and that topic today is online safe practices and security. Our very own Krish Singh, who is our Director of IT, will be presenting today. He's been with our organization for a little over 15 years, and I'm going to let him do his introduction in just a moment. As a reminder, we are recording this presentation, so if you missed something or want to go back or want to share the resource with your peers, please do so by inviting them to view it on our Community Hospice YouTube channel. It'll be up there by the end of the day today. So with that, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Krish throughout the presentation, or you can wait till the end, or you may enter them into the chat box and we'll be monitoring that as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you, Krish. Thanks again for your time today and for sharing all these great resources.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kristen. And just doing a quick mic test. Everybody can hear me perfectly?
Loud and clear.
Great. So as Kristen said, this is our first community connection, and we're super excited to kick this off with a topic that is close to my heart: online safe practices and security. So this topic in itself, we can literally write a book, which we don't have time for today. So we're going to spend about 30 minutes and go over some of what I think are key features. I'm going to take my time with these, and I'll try not to rush through these. And also, as Kristen mentioned, the presentation will be available on the Community Hospice YouTube channel later on if you want to go back and review any of these resources we talk about. So starting off, why should you listen to me today? Well, been in the IT industry since 2005. And over the years I've been in IT, I have seen how our digital footprint has expanded from social media to basically conducting daily activities online, and how that's now an integral part of our lives. It's not something we can avoid. So we definitely want to educate ourselves. Various research done throughout different publications has shown the true cost of cybercrime, and it is literally in the billions of dollars. So with that being said, we're going to talk about a few things we can do to secure ourselves as we go about doing our various online activities daily. So when I say these things, what do we do online? Social media, research. Research is an important one because we're generally browsing and we may be landing on websites we're not familiar with. So it's a good one to kind of keep in mind. With the pandemic, remote learning for school, hybrid programs, submitting work online, shopping, communication, paying bills, online banking, other financial retirement funds, investment accounts, credit card accounts, and the list goes on, right? So these are just a few of the things we do online. And why do we do this? The main advantage is convenience. So I do this. I do all of those things above in there. So am I saying we should stop doing this? Absolutely not. It's there for a reason. It's convenience, it's technology, and we should most certainly make use of it. So with that being said, let's talk specifically about how we protect ourselves. The first and foremost that I want to talk about is passwords. Okay, so what's an example of a bad password? And this might elicit some laughs or smiles, but the top 10 bad passwords, the number one password in that list was 123456. And I wish that weren't so. Here at Community Hospice, we make our password rules where we actually block those passwords, but
okay.
So I want to digress just a little bit here and pull up a web page and talk about what makes a good password. So an example of a weak password is your name and perhaps your birth year with an exclamation. It is something that can be easily guessed. Now, a good way to create a strong password is to create a passphrase. So the example on this website is my cow is happy today. Perhaps this was for a dairy farmer, I'm not sure. Now, you take a phrase that you like. Let's say you like the word liberty, and that's your passphrase. So you take the word liberty, you take the letters I, you convert that to a 1. You take the letter E and you convert that to a 3. So you take your passphrase and you change it slightly. So the passphrase is to make it easy for you to remember that password. Now, if it's slightly longer, then that means you generate a stronger password. So in our example here, my cow is happy today. You can see the O has been replaced with 0. The I has been replaced with 1. And you could also potentially replace the today, the TO with a 2, or just the O with a 0. Now, once we have identified what's a bad password and what not to use, and we've identified what's a good password, let's focus on keeping that password safe. So let's, and I say this because I've seen this happen, and we've literally had to pull sticky notes off of computers. So don't put your password on a sticky note. If you have to write your password down, write it in a diary or a book and put it away in a safe. Use a password manager, and I'm going to circle back to this in a second here. But also, most importantly, it's in the website's best interest for you to frequent that website. So they want to make it easy for you to use it, which means they're going to give you the option to save your credentials. Now, if it's your personal computer and nobody else uses it, fine, by all means, go ahead. I do it on my personal computer, but you want to be careful that you don't save passwords on a computer or a phone or a tablet or an even device that you don't own. Now, the second part was a password manager. So I'm going to pull this website one more time. A password manager is essentially a program, right? It's a software program that has a database. So now instead of remembering one password, multiple passwords, you remember one good, strong password. If you find you don't have a good memory for password, a password manager comes in really handy. So here are some of the ones that I recommend. And again, we're recording this, so you can come back and view this on our YouTube channel if you want to look at these resources again. LastPass right here is one of the better ones. It'll work with Windows, Apple, Android, iPhone, and iPad. And you can also install the extension for it on your browser. So then your browser will see if you're logging into, for example, Facebook, and then it'll pull the password from LastPass. There's a free version of it. There's a paid version of it with some extra perks. So LastPass is a good password manager. I also recommend 1Password. It's one that I've personally used. And then lastly, I also like KeePass. This is one we use here professionally at Community Hospice. The IT department uses this to store the multiple passwords that we have. Okay, now we've already kind of talked about some good examples. And again, just to refresh, think of a phrase. Think of a phrase you like. It can be several words, 1 or 2, 3 words is a good example, because that means your password will be fairly long, but it'll still be easy for you to remember. Some of the other recommendations in this one, now you have to remember these things that we're talking about, these are all good things, but you also have to balance these with convenience in day-to-day life. When we have to remember 20 passwords and change them regularly, I can see where that can become quite challenging. So to change passwords regularly, I would recommend doing this for perhaps your banking sites, online banking, investment accounts, things of that sort. It's very It's a very good example. Obviously, this one goes without saying, don't share your password and try to avoid using the same password across different accounts. We've all seen articles in the news where you'll read an article where Home Depot was hacked, or what's another one that we had recently, crypto.com was hacked. So what we end up doing inadvertently, we don't realize, is we use the same user ID in a lot of our different accounts, right? It could be your email address. So now if you have the same password across different accounts and one of these sites gets hacked, you're vulnerable across the board. So again, this is where a password manager comes in handy, because now you're obviously having to remember multiple passwords for different accounts. All right. Last on this password list, I want to kind of make a little mention here. Be careful when you're out and about. Let's say you're at Starbucks, you're enjoying a nice Frappuccino, and you're on their public Wi-Fi. Just be careful of what you do on free and public Wi-Fi's, because you don't know how that data is being routed. So avoid using anything that you wouldn't want to be hacked. Just browsing Google, reading news articles, that's fine. Obviously, avoid doing online banking and any other secure financial transactions when you're in a free or public Wi-Fi. So we talked about passwords. Now we're going to talk about how to secure our accounts. And then I'm going to talk a little bit after this about how to secure our devices, because it's easy to think of computers and laptops, but in this day and age, we do more on our mobile devices than ever. Now, how do we secure our accounts? The primary thing that I recommend to every single person is to use two-factor authentication. Now, if that's a terminology you're not familiar with, then I'm glad we're talking about it. I'm going to pull up my browser again. Bear with me. Okay. So if you log into a site and you use just your ID and your password, that is known as a single-step verification. Okay. So let's say my credentials are leaked. So now out there on the World Wide Web, everybody knows that access to this site is krish.singh and the password is password1234. So they can go ahead and use that, get in and do what they need to do. However, when we add a second factor authentication, they need a unique code in addition to my credentials. I would recommend this heavily for, again, financial institutions. If you use, let's say Gmail is your primary email, definitely enable two-factor authentication. Now, so essentially you're going to log in. Your second factor authentication is going to give you an authentication code, and only then will you have access. So how do we get that second factor authentication, right? So here's what I recommend. Again, in this day and age, everybody has a mobile device, and the ones that I'm going to recommend are, and I'm scrolling here, bear with me. So the types of two-factor authentication, as you can see, there's various types. I want to make a little caveat here. SMS-based two-factor authentication, this is where, let's say I use Chase. Chase has my cell phone number on file. So when I log in from a computer they don't recognize, they send me a text message on my phone with a little code. And then I put the code into the website. Recently, this hasn't been as secure as we would like. There is a hack called SIM swapping. So this is where somebody calls your phone carrier and kind of social engineers and say, hi, I had to buy a new phone. They basically pretend to be you and they say all the right things, and they get your number transferred to a different SIM card. So you can see where that can be a problem, where now your two-factor authentication is coming across as a text. What I like is a software token based. So what's a good example of that? Google Authenticator is a really good example. This is basically an app on your phone, okay? And on that app, there'll be a listing of all the various accounts that you have chosen to enable two-factor authentication. So let's say Gmail is in there. I go to a brand new computer that I've never logged into before. I put in my username. I put in my password, I log in, and it says, oh, hey, we see you have two-factor authentication enabled. Please go ahead and put in your unique code as well. So I pull out my phone, open Google Authenticator, and a Google Authenticator will give me a 6-digit unique code that changes every time. So I'll put that code in as a one-time use, and now I'm into that account. So Google Authenticator is a good one. It's one that I personally use. I also recommend Microsoft Authenticator and Authy by Twilio. Lastly, we also use Duo. This one we use professionally here at Community Hospice to protect our VPN accounts. The more professional features are unlocked by the paid version. I would say this might be overkill. Definitely Authy, Microsoft Authenticator, and what I personally use is Google Authenticator. Okay, so going back to the presentation, we're talking about how to secure our accounts. We've talked about using a two-factor authentication, and I kind of jumped the gun a little bit, but you'll see the second bullet point in there is try to avoid using text or SMS verification just to avoid SIM swapping. Now, again, I am going to talk about social media, and one of the things you might see is fun games and surveys on social media. Some of these are truly fun, others are kind of data gatherers. For example, again, I'm going to pull up my browser here and pull up Facebook. Here's a good one. You may have seen people post, what celebrity do you look like? So when I click play game, this is going to ask me multiple questions, right? And with those answers, it's going to try to match me to a celebrity. So it's fun. I can post that. Friends can comment and like on it. But what have I done? Now, the questions might be something like, hey, what was your first car? What's your favorite color? Who's your favorite actor? If those things sound familiar to you, here's why. If you've ever created an account and have been prompted to create security questions in case you forget your password, right? So you click forgot password, what does it say? Well, here's your security questions. A lot of those security questions are very similar questions. What was your first car? What was your first job? Which city were you born in? What's your favorite color? Who's your favorite actor? This information ends up on sales leads that are then sold out. They're available everywhere. So I generally recommend avoiding these. Okay. Here, something else that I recommend doing. Now, again, remember, you can go all out.
Hello?
You can go all out, or you can also try to
Hello?
figure out what is best in terms for you as far as your return on your investment, right? How much time are you willing to spend? One of the things I mentioned earlier is we more often than not don't realize it. Even if we have several different passwords across multiple sites, our user ID might be the same email address. I was guilty of this. My first name and last name at gmail.com, and I used it everywhere. So one thing that you can do in today's day and age, it takes next to no time to create additional email accounts, whether it's a Yahoo, Gmail. I recommend Proton, Proton. It's a safe end-to-end encrypted free webmail. So I recommend creating different ones. Not only at this point now you have a different password for each site, you have a different ID. Now, sometimes you might need to register. For example, I just bought a new camera. Well, okay, that's a bad example. I just bought a something else. Let's say I bought a new washing machine. I need to go register it. Or not even for the warranty, I just need to put in some kind of email address in there to get more information. I don't really want them to reach out to me. That's where a throwaway email address makes sense, right? Or if you're just signing up for a form to look at some information, but you don't really want to have your primary email address in there. So bear in mind that throwaway email accounts is a good resource. They take not a whole lot of time to create, and you don't necessarily even need to remember it. Okay, online shopping. Now we mentioned this is a big one. Obviously, the best way here is to try to buy things from safe and known websites. Amazon, Best Buy, those are a few. Obviously, there's quite a few others. But sometimes you may come across a product that's not available anywhere else, right? You may need to go to that manufacturer's website. How do you know that's safe? Well, here are some of the things I can tell you to look out for. See if I can pull this up and show you an example here. So if we go to this site, right, the best password manager, I pulled a resource from cnet.com. Do you see that little padlock over there? That padlock is your indication that that site is running on HTTPS. The S stands for secure, which means they've invested in an SSL certificate to secure their website. Most scammer sites, they don't bother with that. So first and foremost, before you do any financial transaction on any web page, look for that padlock or look for that address, right? So https://www.yahoo.com. Look for that HTTPS or the padlock. One other way that I've seen a lot of computers get infected is you may be on a legitimate website. However, all of a sudden an ad pops up, and they pop up strategically too. They pop up on key areas that people click. So even though you didn't mean to, you were going to click on something else, but a pop-up popped up and you clicked on that, and now it's redirected you to a different website, which may be an ad, which may be trying to install malicious malware on your computer. So beware of pop-ups. If your browser allows you, most browsers do, go and block pop-ups. If you're at a genuine website where a pop-up is genuinely needed, you will get a notification that the pop-up was blocked and you can make an exception for that website. It's something, again, I personally do, and it served me well. Lastly, I want to talk about a browser extension called Ad Blocker. I use this as well. This is a free one. It's basically just an extension. On Google Chrome, you can add this. And now when you're browsing different websites, this is blocking ads for you. Just beware. Sometimes certain sites, blogs that rely on ads will see that you have an ad blocker and ask you to disable it, or they don't let you continue on that web page. But most times, ad blocker is a great, great tool. All right, so bear with me. I know there's a lot of information on the screen here, but we'll kind of go over this. We've talked about passwords, what's bad, what's good, how to keep them safe. We've talked about how to secure our accounts and some of the safe practices. Now let's dive a little bit deeper into the devices we use: laptop, tablet, iPhone, Android phone. One of the ways manufacturers, companies track you is by your browser activity, right? Certain things called cookies that are in the cache. Have you ever looked online or searched for, let's say I was searching online for computer speakers. I did my research, I looked through, then I go back to Facebook, and lo and behold, what do I see? An ad for computer speakers. How did they get that? By monitoring my browser activity and storing things like cookies. So all browsers have a mode called privacy mode or incognito mode. So in Google Chrome, if you see here, I have these 4 tabs open in normal mode, but I can go and do new incognito window. And when you go incognito, your browser will not save your browsing history. You'll have to unlock your device. Oh, I'm sorry. Seem to have triggered my phone's smart assistant. Sorry. Okay. Your browsing history, your cookies and site data, and any information that was entered in forms. Okay, so browser privacy or incognito mode. On your computer, you should most certainly have a good, strong antivirus software. Beware of the big box, kind of big name ones, Norton, McAfee. Sometimes they try really hard to make sure that you keep updating in that system, and it's hard. There's really good ones out there Look for software such as Sophos. It's spelled Sophos. Look for malware antibytes. Those are good ones. Now, when you have a good one, be sure to update that regularly. The best analogy I can give you for an antivirus software is think about it as a library. It's only as good as the books in it, right? So if you go to the library every day and they don't get new books, after a while, you're going to read all the books and then that library is useless. So when you update your antivirus software on a regular basis, it's like your library getting new books. Okay. Be wary and careful of what you download. Anytime something gives you a free download, immediately be suspicious. In IT, we have a saying, if it's free, you are the product. So the most common one I see is when folks try to go find a free desktop wallpaper. There's good sites out there. So I'm not saying that all free desktop wallpaper sites are bad, but beware that some could also potentially come bundled with viruses and malware. Okay, now we'll move on specifically to mobile devices. This is big in our lives now, right? We live our lives by our mobile devices. So first and foremost, if you haven't already secured it with a PIN, go ahead and do so. At the bare minimum, use a 4-digit PIN, preferably not 1, 2, 3, 4. If you don't mind, go ahead and use a 6-digit PIN. If your device offers a biometric unlock option, Android phones come with good fingerprint readers. Some of Android phones come with good face unlock. Most aren't that secure. Apple's face unlock is really secure, and that's a good one to use. If your device has that option, most certainly enable it. Also, be careful where you install your apps from. I would recommend only installing it from the Apple or Google App Store. If a website tries to have you sideload an ad or an app, avoid that. When the apps are listed on the Google or Apple App Store, they have been vetted by the best and they're safe to use. Now, on your phone as well, the same as with your computer antivirus, your phone also gets updates. Apple is really good. Most of their devices, if nothing else, gets at least 3 years worth of updates. I know a lot of us don't like change. When our devices update, it looks like now things work differently, the notifications look differently. It's a big hassle, right? But I would say it's worth it because those updates come with security patches. So anytime a vulnerability or a bug has been discovered, manufacturers release those updates, those security updates. So when you update your device, you are keeping yourself safe. When it comes to Android phones, Google makes a line of devices called Pixel devices, spelled Pixel, and they also ensure 2 to 3 years of software support. So for your next device purchase, here's a question that you should put on top of your list. See if you can find out what the manufacturer has promised in terms of supporting it with software updates. I would say go with something that does a minimum of 3 years. Okay, now, with recent updates, there's something that has changed and for the better. When you install apps on your device, you will get prompted, hey, this app wants access to this. Do you want to allow? Yes, no, which is great. So for example, if I'm installing a calculator app, there's absolutely no reason it should be asking for access to my device's microphone or my contact list. So don't blindly say yes to everything, read and say no. If it's not needed, say no. And if the app stops working, guess what? Find another app. It's better to be safe than sorry. Now, if this is kind of news to you and you're like, oh, I've installed a ton of apps. How do I know what has access to what? So both Apple and Android devices, if you go into settings, go into applications, you will see what permission levels they have in your device. And you can review this. If you're not sure for your specific device, I would recommend doing a Google search. So for example, if I have a Google Pixel 6, I can say, where do I find app settings on app permission settings on a Google Pixel 6? And then follow the results from there. So those are some of the things we can do to secure our devices. Now we've talked about passwords, securing our accounts, and securing our devices. The next biggest thing, and we're kind of coming up to our last major section of this presentation, is phishing email. This is a big one because you can have the best, strongest password, the most secure account, and the most protected devices. But if somebody sends you a fake email and social engineers, as we call it, and tricks you, then none of those matter. Antivirus software, some email apps do a fairly good job of trying to spot phishing emails, but at the end of the day, the best resource here is you. You have to educate yourself. Okay. Phishing emails can trick you through a bunch of things, right? It can be a text message. You can get a text message that says, "Dear Chase customer, your account has been blocked due to insufficient funds. Please click here." Or your password has been compromised. Please log in and change password. These are scary things. When I say social engineer, they trick you by playing on emotion. They try to scare you. And I'm going to use a specific example. A gentleman I recently helped several weeks ago, he got a phone call, and on his call ID, it said Citibank. So right there, I want you to repeat after me. Caller ID means nothing. It can be faked. Do not trust your phone if the caller ID says Chase or Citibank or Fidelity or Charles Schwab. They can be faked. Do not trust them, okay? And they tricked this gentleman and they got his account compromised, and they stole a lot of resources from him, unfortunately. The trick was, when we tried to go legitimately to the site, we spent an hour on hold, then the call was dropped, and we got the worst support. So again, I'm going to circle back to something. If it's free, be suspicious. In our line of work, we have to stay on hold for hours before we can get support. So if somebody just randomly calls you out of the blue and offers you support, I'd be very suspicious. In the 17 years I've been in IT, that's rarely happened. I chase after them for support. They don't come after me. So phishing emails and text messages may look like they're from a company you know or trust, right? They may look like they're from a bank, a credit card company, a social networking site, online payment website or app, or an online store. There's one example where we had somebody who was genuinely stressed out and waiting for a medical invoice. So lo and behold, they got a fake one in the email. They clicked on the attachment and their computer got infected by malware. So phishing emails and text messages, they will try to tell you a story to trick you into clicking on a link or opening an attachment. Generally, opening the text message or the email and reading it is fine. You don't want to respond. You don't want to click on any links or open any attachments in there. Okay? If it's from a source you don't recognize, if it's something you weren't expecting, I would say be suspicious. The more paranoid you are when it comes to phishing emails, the better it is. So something might say, again, they've noticed some suspicious activity or login attempts, or claim there's a problem with your account or payment information. It'll try to get you to confirm some personal information, or like I said earlier, include a fake invoice, or make you click on a link to send a payment, or say you're eligible to register for a government refund, offer a coupon for free stuff. The one thing that I have noticed that's an easy spot is look for grammatical errors, odd capitalizations, and misspellings. And we'll look at a specific example here. So I'm not sure how well you can see that screenshot, but this one basically, and the reason it's small is because I try to capture an example that you might see on your mobile device. So when you open that email, okay, the Netflix logo looks really good. That looks legit. Everybody has Netflix. So there's a fairly good chance you have Netflix. And it says, hey, your account's on hold. So immediately there's an exclamation, a triangle with an exclamation. It's kind of playing with your emotions, like, hey, alert, alert. Now, update your payment details. When you go click on update account now, it's going to take you to a different site, not Netflix. And you're going to put in your Netflix account credentials, and now it's captured your credentials. Now they can go to the genuine Netflix site, log in as you, change your password. Okay, it's Netflix. You can call them and cancel it or change it. Imagine if it was your bank or your investment account. Those aren't as easy to change. You might be on hold for an hour and somebody's logged into your account, clearing your account out. So this is where phishing emails are one of the biggest things to be on the lookout for. So a good example here, even though this was really well done, it starts off by saying, please update your payment details. And then it says, hi, dear. That's not something most companies would say. So that's a small example of a red flag to look out for. Okay. What do you do if you suspect a phishing attack, right? If you get an email and you're suspicious of it, what do you do? Again, do not click on a link or open an attachment. Now, if it said Netflix, as with our prior example, ask yourself this: do I have an account with the company? If the answer is no, that's simple. Okay, perfect. Delete. This is phishing. But what if I do have an account with Netflix and the logo looked really good and now I'm super confused? Here's the thing. Do not click on the link or the attachment in that email. Do not use any phone number. Do not use any contact information that was given in that email. Close that email, open up your browser, go to netflix.com, browse until you find the customer support, and go that route. Call them and say, hi, my name is Krish. I am a customer of yours. I just got an email that my account's compromised. Could you please confirm? And this is the easiest way you can avoid, because sometimes the phishing emails might look so good that you're going to be legitimately concerned that there is an issue. Simplest way, it might take some time on your end, just avoid using the contact information on that email. Go to that organization's legitimate website and use the contact details there. Okay. So when you do get a phishing email and you've confirmed that's a phishing email, the best thing to do is obviously delete it, do not respond to it, but also it's good to kind of spread that education. Again, this will be shared. So if you don't get a chance to get this, you can get this later. There is an email address you can forward it to, reportphishing@apwg.org. If you get a text, you can forward it to spam, which is 7726. You can also report it to reportfraud.ftc.gov. So you're saying, well, what's the use of that? They're not going to use the same email address to send it again. What this does is it identifies the latest trends. So for example, a new trend that was discovered is you get called and say, hey, you got overcharged on Amazon. We have to return your money. So immediately they're playing on your emotions, because now, hey, who doesn't want free money? And this scam became so successful, but once it got reported enough, then it started being, reported on all the education sites. So when you report phishing emails, you're doing your part to make sure that people are aware of any trends going on. Obviously, if you're at work, most definitely report it to your IT department. They can do a bunch of things. They can block that sending email address. Sure, chances are they're going to generate another one, but if we can block one that could have potentially created an infection, then I'd consider that a win. Okay, so we're on the tail end of this presentation. Again, I want you, when you're free time, to make a note of this URL. And what this does, phishingquizwithgoogle.com, it's like an online quiz, and you can kind of test yourself on how well you can spot phishing emails. I'll warn you, some of the examples on there are really tough ones, and I've missed a few. So, which means, we learn by making mistakes, and I'd rather do it on a simulation than on the real thing. So most definitely, please try this. And I believe that is the last thing. So again, we talked about passwords. What's a bad password? What's a good password? How to save it? Some good practices: use different passwords, create throwaway email accounts, secure your account, secure your device, and look out for phishing emails. these are four of the things that I think are some of the bigger things for online safety. Obviously, there's more things, but we don't have time for that today. I will leave it on this slide and switch it over to Kristen.
Krish, thank you so much for all that information. I think especially now, COVID has really pushed us out into the virtual and digital world. And so we're using our tablets and our phones and all these different platforms and softwares and online banking and whatnot, even more so than we were prior. So great resources, and we really appreciate your time. I would like to just invite you, that slide went away. So
Oops, sorry.
that's okay. So I'd like to invite you on February the 23rd, same time, same link, to join us again for our next series or our next webinar. And that topic is going to be on what is hospice and palliative care. There's a lot of confusion when it comes to understanding the ins and outs of hospice services as well as palliative care services and who qualifies for those different programs and services and what resources they can help our family members. So we are excited to dig in a little deeper and provide you some information specifically on those programs. Does anybody have a question for Krish before we wrap this up? I see a comment. Edith said, thank you so much, Krish. This was very helpful. So thank you.
You're most welcome.
And if somebody wants to unmute themselves, you're welcome to do that at this time.
It's Edith again. I have a quick question. I didn't quite get the incognito.
Sure. So when you go incognito, did you mean how to go incognito, or what's the advantage of that?
No, I meant how you go incognito. I didn't see how you switched
Sure.
from one tab to the incognito tab. Thank you.
So I'm using Google Chrome. Other browsers might do it a little bit differently. In Google Chrome, I have a settings option right here. The three dots, the ellipses. Do you see where my mouse is?
We don't see it, Krish.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. I'm sharing the presentation, not the screen. Give me 1 second here. Stop that share and share my screen instead. Okay. Can you see it now?
We can't.
Yes, thank you.
Of course. So in Google Chrome, there's these three dots right here, the ellipses as we call them, for settings. You can click on the three dots here and then do new incognito window or new incognito tab. Do you see?
Yes.
Go ahead
Thank
and I say go ahead and click that so they can see what it would look like.
Exactly. I believe there's a keyboard shortcut you can use as well, but that's probably more for us IT folks. It's easy to remember. Control, Shift, and N. That opens a new window. When you use Google Chrome, again, that's Control, Shift, and the letter N. So if you press those three buttons on your keyboard, it will open an incognito window. Okay.
Are there any
Thank
other
you.
questions or comments? Thank you, Edith.
That's a great question. Yeah.
Pauline has one. Pauline, go ahead.
Yes, when something pops up and said you have to accept the cookies, would you just get out of the site, or can we avoid that?
So that's another good question. And a lot of times the way they do it is they'll block the website. The website you were trying to go on, the notification or the pop-up will block most of that page, and they make it hard for you to circumnavigate around it. If you see an X button, definitely you can go ahead and X out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, cookies by themselves are not malicious in nature as far as they will get a virus on your computer,
Mm-hmm.
but they work in data gathering. They see what you like, what you're searching for, and then they generate ads, right? This is kind of how the internet works. Nothing's really free. Again, if it's free, you are the product.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer your question, if you see an X, you can X out of it. You can kind of right click. So for example, I think I'm still sharing my screen. So do you see how I have Google Chrome open, the browser is open, and let's say I get this giant pop-up right here and I can't avoid it. So instead of clicking anywhere on the browser itself, I can simply come down here to my taskbar, see where I have Google Chrome open, right click on it and just say close all windows, and then just make a note, hey, I don't want to go back to that website.
Okay.
So again, cookies by nature, not necessarily malicious. However, a seemingly legitimate website may get a pop-up, and the pop-up may not be an ad. It may actually say, again, play on emotion, say something like, alert, alert, your computer has been infected by a virus, big giant neon letters flashing. When you click on that pop-up, that's when you get in trouble. So if you see that, don't click on that at all. Do what I just showed you. Come down here to your taskbar, right click on that browser window and just close it all.
Okay,
Just make a mental note like, okay, don't go there.
okay.
Great question.
That is a great question. Any other questions from our guests that are joining us?
Yeah, hi, Kirsten. Gary here.
Gary.
I don't see my face on the screen, but anyway, I guess I've got the camera off. Bottom line, when will the YouTube be available? Because there's some good information in that presentation.
Yeah, we're going to work on having that up on our YouTube channel by the end of the day today.
Oh, okay, that's good. Good, thanks.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining us, Gary. All right. Any other questions at this time for Krish? If not, he's here at Community Hospice. You can always reach out to us and we'll be happy to assist you.
Most definitely here to help.
Oh, good presentation, Kirsch.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank
with that,
you.
wish you all well. Please stay safe and we hope to see you back on February the 23rd. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.